Interstate 95. Yeah, alright. This is it. It's the last one. I-95 southbound Supercut. Been 7 videos over 9 weeks. It's been quite a ride on I-95, but this will be the final one. Thank you so much for watching all these series of 95. It's been a lot of fun to do. Look at its route. It is the same as north, but we're going the other way. We are starting northeast of the Northeast in Holton, Maine, and making our way all the way down to Miami, Florida, south of the South. And it's going to be awesome as we go one last go here. You're watching Control City Freak. This is the YouTube channel where we talk about interstate highways and the places that they're assigned to go to. If you dig this kind of content, why not give us a like? And if you really dig it, why not subscribe? Yeah, subscribe. And right now is the point where I remind you that you can put in $5 for a super thanks or a super sticker to request an exit of your choice. And we are done with I-95. You can request for I-96, although that video is probably mostly edited by now. And definitely 97, 99 are wide open. So thanks so much. Let's talk about southbound. So we will begin in Canada, and we have this sign for New Brunswick Highway 95 to I-95, Holton, Maine. I'm almost surprised to put Holton on there instead of just Maine. And here is our American Customs and Immigration to head into the USA. And at the very beginning, we just get 95 South and US 2 for Holton Industrial Park. And we see we are signed for Bangor right from the beginning, which I think is the correct choice. We meet US 1 for Holton, the main exit for downtown Holton, Maine. And again, at random interchanges, it is 95 South Bangor. Bangor is the bottom line city on the sign as well. And we meet 395 for Bangor, and now we get 95 South Newport, Augusta. If you're going to put 2 cities on there, Augusta, Portland, come on. And we see at random interchanges, it is 95 South for Augusta. And here, exit 109A, we are getting the Augusta exit, 200 miles into Maine, wow. And we see that there's another exit sign missing. Although this one, if we go back like 3 or 4 years, we see there was a sign there, so it must have fallen off or something, and they just haven't replaced it. We're meeting 295, and this is a terribly signed exit. 295 South for Gardner, Brunswick, 95 for Lewiston, Portland. It is faster and cheaper to take 295 to Portland. It is free, in fact, and much faster. So 95 should be signed for Lewiston only, not for Portland, and 295 should be signed for Portland. This is the schemiest toll scam I've ever seen. Here is what the toll booth looks like. Getting that $4 from the people they trick into driving to Portland on this road. And at the random interchanges early on, we get Lewiston and Portland being on it after the 295 split is okay, but Lewiston by itself could do the job too. South of Lewiston, kind of cool. We get South 95 for Portland and Boston. Wow. And 95 for Lewiston and Augusta. And now we're meeting 295, or the 495 road to 295 for Freeport. Although at that junction, 95 is sounding Portland Kittery instead of Boston. Boston goes away, we get Kittery, which is definitely a big downgrade. And 95 North, Auburn, Lewiston. Looking on 295 itself at the end of 295, we see 295 is going to be 295 South Kittery because it's a wide junction. So Kittery, no Boston, goes away entirely. Pretty lame, Maine, pretty lame. And on 195, we have the same thing. 95 South Kittery, 95 North Portland. So no Boston mention at all. Now we get exit 32. This was requested by Interstate Fiesta, and it is for Biddeford and Sanford. So thank you so much for that request. I wonder if anything else is in that area. Lyman! Oh no, Lyman! But it's not signed on the interstate, so I guess it's okay. When we get to exit 2, Kittery, we finally get 95 South Portsmouth and Boston. Maine finally acknowledges that something exists beyond its own borders, so nice of them to do it now, I guess? And we cross the bridge into New Hampshire. We just get a state line New Hampshire. We don't get that cool live free or die sign. Might be one further down the road, but I didn't see it. And we get South 95 to the Spalding Turnpike, Hampton and Boston. So, you know, we gotta put a New Hampshire city on there. Here's an exit requested by the iPhone Geek. He did request it for the New England episode, and I forgot about it, so I'm putting it on a supercut twice. This is for the Spalding Turnpike in New Hampshire. It is exit 4 northbound, but southbound it is exit 5. So here it is. Thank you so much. Tim Slager requested seeing exit 3B, and this also goes to Stratham, not just to Greenland and Portsmouth. So thank you so much for that request. I appreciate that. And this is also our last exit before the toll. Here's exit 2 in New Hampshire for Hampton and Manchester, and this exit was requested by Mo Cowan. I hope I'm saying that correctly. And I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And also in this, we get to see that it is in fact $2 for the New Hampshire toll. At that exit, we see it is signed Portsmouth and Main Points North and Hampton, Boston South. So still got that Hampton there. In Hampton, now we get 95 signed for Seabrook and Boston. So again, gotta throw that New Hampshire place on there. Finally, on the last exit in New Hampshire, we do get 95 South for Boston. At the first exit in Massachusetts, we get 95 South Boston. And after that first exit, Massachusetts finally gets around to welcoming us. And we meet 495 South for Worcester, and 95 is signed for Boston, as it should be. However, random interchanges, now we get 95 South for Peabody and Boston, instead of just Boston. Which isn't too bad. It gets worse. And here we're getting South 95 to 128, since 128 is what all Massachusetts people call the road that 95 currently occupies. And there's also independent 128 that we meet in Peabody as well. So signing 95 Peabody here wouldn't be too bad. Also, signing 95 at this one, instead of Waltham as Peabody, since 1 is going to Boston, is alright as well. But I would not sign it Waltham. That just seems lame. We're meeting 128 itself, and we're joining 128 as well. We see South 128 is straight ahead, and that sign on their left. We will be on South 95 Waltham, which again, very lame. Peabody wouldn't work here, but I would sign it. I'd go back to signing it Boston at this point. We meet US 1 once again, the US 1 freeway, so if you missed it the first time, you can get it the second time. And we see 128 is straight ahead along with 95. Putting Waltham on an overhead pull-through sign on I-95, a suburb like that, on a road of this caliber is absolutely ridiculous. This is extremely provincial by Massachusetts, who's done a pretty good job up until now, but this is really weak. Random interchanges, it is Waltham and Providence. Why? I mean, they talk about Portsmouth going northbound pretty much from the beginning, yet it's hard for them to talk about Providence going southbound, even though Providence is much more well-known and much larger than Portsmouth. Meaning I-93 south for Boston here. I would have signed 95 south for Boston up until this junction with I-93, and then sign it for Providence from that point. But we get no pull-through at this intersection. Michelle Bowe requested exit 51A, US 3 south for Winchester, so thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And we're meeting I-90 again, exit 39B. 39B all one exit, and 39A is a totally different road, so pretty interesting. And Zach R. wanted to see the 95 and 90 interchange from above, and we see it's quite complicated there with that Highway 30 stuff in there, and also because they have to deal with the toll apparatus of the Mass Pike. At that interchange on I-90, 95 is signed south for Dedham and Providence, and north for Waltham and Portsmouth. We're meeting I-93 in the southern end of the Boston Metro, and 95 is now signed south Providence. Finally. But we're not done yet. At random interchanges, we are on 95 South Attleboro and Providence. Can't just be some non-Massachusetts thing. Here is our exit for Foxborough Stadium. So notice the spelling here. I hate the Patriots. So the Patriots Stadium was always called Foxborough Stadium, spelled this same way here. And whenever you saw Foxborough on ESPN or in the news, always the same spelling. But then when Tom Brady and Belichick started winning Super Bowls, all of a sudden they add the UGH on every ESPN or whatever thing you say, you know. We're not Foxborough anymore, now we're Foxborough. I mean, come on, we have to add 3 more letters that add no sound to it whatsoever. I know that's the original spelling of the town, but still, come on. Didn't used to be that way on sports reports, and then it was after Brady. Patriots. And we got 495 south for Cape Cod and north for Worcester. 4 more miles till 295 and only 18 more miles till Providence. And now we're meeting 295 south for Woonsocket and Warwick. And this road also goes to Cumberland, Rhode Island, which is used by Melissa and Derek Depot, or Depot, who requested this interchange. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Crossing in Rhode Island, and we get an advisory. Exit numbers change summer of 2022. So we get mileage-based exits now. Yay! Looks like we're entering a toll road here, but they've got the tarp thrown over the sign telling us that, so I assume we are not being charged a toll as we drive under this mechanism here. And then we get Discover Beautiful Rhode Island, like 3 or 4 miles into Rhode Island. There's not a lot of Rhode Island to begin with. 3 or 4 miles, it's like, what, like 40% of the state we've already driven through. Come on, you guys got to put it right at the border. And we pass the Capitol building in Providence right here. And downtown Providence, we are signed 95 South New York. And that's quite a swing, and that is the correct answer. It should not be for New Haven. New Haven makes sense coming out of New York because of that 91 split and the angle that it has. But going south, the 91 exit doesn't matter so much anymore. So New York is definitely the right pick. Here is a look at downtown Providence. And we have our exit for 195 for East Providence and Cape Cod. 295, we meet at a Y intersection, so we get this road that will take us to 295 North. Real missed opportunity here. We could have a nice 95 South New York sign here, but they didn't put a control city. They just put a through traffic sort of thing. And Rhode Island getting in on the East Coast provincialism. We get some 95 South Westerly in New York. Can't just have New York. Rhode Island, it's a big place. We got to add something else. And Percs A has this request for exit 1 in Rhode Island, Hopkinton, and Westerly. So thank you so much for that request. Really appreciate that. All right, we enter Connecticut here. And in Connecticut, we are no longer on 95 South New York. Now we're on 95 South New London. Why? Come on. I mean, you could make an argument for New Haven. It'd be a bad one, but you can make one. But New London going this direction? Come on. And we cross the New London Bridge over the New Thames River into New London. And in New London, we now are signed for 95 South New Haven. We don't meet 395 going in this direction, so here is where we cross over 395 from its split going the other way. And Melissa Della wanted to take a look at exit 72 for Rocky Neck State Park. I mean, Rocky works out a lot, but I'm naming a whole state park just after his neck? Okay. Alright. And here we cross the Connecticut River. It's quite wide at this point here. At random interchanges, we get 95 North, New London, Providence, and South New Haven, New York City. So we get New York on the map again here. And we are meeting 91 north for Hartford, so from this point, we will be on 95 South New York City. Interesting that even going this direction, they opt not to sign Bridgeport. Going the other way, we were bypassing Bridgeport in favor of a different Connecticut city, but now we are bypassing Bridgeport in favor of an out-of-state city. It's the right choice, I'm just surprised that they did it. And now 95 South gets no sign, and we get 25 and 8 for Waterbury, kind of a major interchange here. And at random interchanges, it is 95 South New York City. And here is a look at downtown Bridgeport. This is a fairly major road here too. US 7 for Norwalk and Danbury. This is a freeway in Connecticut. And we're meeting US 1 once again for Riverside and Old Greenwich. Exit 5, so just 5 more miles till the border. And here is where we cross the river back into New York State. Left off the Connecticut border last week, and now we see we are on 95 South New York. And we have the exit for 287 for White Plains. We get the Cuomo or Tappan Zee Bridge signed right here. We see this is a toll road here in this part, the New England Thruway, but only northbound. Southbound, it is free, so good times for us now. This is very near exit 13. This is the Eastchester Scrap facility where New York City Metro buses that are retired are brought to be scrapped. So this is pretty interesting, and this exit or site was requested by Rocketship Gaming. So thank you so much, I really appreciate that. And we see at random interchanges it is 95 South New York, so no surprise there. We don't get any kind of welcome to New York City sign, but we do get a Bronx County line here as we head into the city. And here we get truck route 2678 Whitestone Bridge, use exit 6A. Here we get the Hutchinson Parkway and Whitestone Bridge, cars only because this is a parkway, and Whitestone Bridge, truck traffic, use exit 6A. There's exit 7A, South 695, and to South 295, the Throgs Neck Bridge in Long Island. 95 is now signed for the George Washington Bridge, which makes sense. And here at exit 6B, we get West 278, the start of 278, the BQE, Brooklyn Queens Expressway, along with other roads, and it is signed as the RFK Bridge to Manhattan, which also is better known as the Triborough Bridge, and 95 south for the George Washington Bridge and Newark. We are going to be meeting I-87, the Major Deegan Expressway for Queens and Albany, and 95 is signed for the George Washington Bridge and Newark once again. However, on I-87, 95 is signed south for Trenton instead of Newark, which is a little weird. I don't like all the Trenton signage, and we're going to see a lot of it today. Newark does make sense since, it's big, and 95 goes there. We're going to be meeting the GWB pretty soon, so we see the upper and lower level split, and that we will be meeting the Henry Hudson Parkway in Manhattan shortly. And here we cross into Manhattan. I believe this is the Harlem River, not the East River, I was told in previous comments. And here's what I-95 in Manhattan looks like going across the top of Manhattan. We see it goes under a lot of tunnels. There's a lot built up on top of I-95, which would make sense, it being Manhattan and all. Now we're on 95 South, New Jersey. They get rid of Newark and they just say New Jersey here. And we get this warning for last exit in New York. And between caps, we get another 95 South, New Jersey, and they really wanted to let us know that this is the last exit in New York. Beware! Here's what it looks like heading toward the GWB in the lower level. We saw the upper level earlier. And here it is on the upper level, and this is as good of a look as we get at the bridge. This is as far as Street View goes. But here's a look at the George Washington Bridge on Google Maps. Looks like a bridge. And welcome to New Jersey. We're in the Palisades, and we've got a whole bunch of stuff coming up. Fort Lee, we got 1, 9, 46, 4. No room for control cities on those. Too many roads to fire off. And then we throw 80 into the mix, so a whole sea of roads with local and express lanes. 95, 80, and New Jersey Turnpike. 80, for some reason, a smaller sign than 95. And so we get South 95 to New Jersey Turnpike and to I-80. So I-80 Express, Patterson, I-80 Local, Hackensack. And we see we're going to be spawning I-80 soon here at exit 69. Nice. Here's another look at the beginning of I-80. So we see South 95 Newark and West 80 Hackensack and Patterson. So express lanes, only Patterson, and local lanes, Hackensack as well. And here we are on 95 turning south as we leave I-80 behind. Just for kicks, just to show you, going on I-80, we get end 80 and begin 95 north, George Washington Bridge, New York City, and we get South 95 has no control city other than New Jersey Turnpike. So if you're going on eastbound 80, we don't get a control for the way we're going here. No Newark, no Philly, no Trenton. And we are now South 95 for Newark, and this is our last exit before toll for the Ridgefields. And we are now going to be splitting into our east and west legs of I-95. So 95 South, Trenton, Lincoln Tunnel. So Trenton. Again, we're going with Trenton. So Turnpike South, 16 West, and exit 17 Lincoln Tunnel here. This is not actually the exit for Lincoln Tunnel. We just see that it's going to be coming up if you take the eastern extension. And so we are taking the west leg this time, and this is what it looks like in the west leg as we cross into the Meadowlands area. And we see Giant Stadium up ahead, and it is going to be Meadowlands Complex and American Dream. So they don't mention the stadium there, but they mention this mall that they've been building out there. And we're on 95 South Newark again. So Newark is back, no more Trenton. New Jersey, nothing if not consistent. And here is our toll as we continue on the west leg. Can't really see the stadiums because they're blocked by this giant mall here, the American Dream Mall, which maybe it's come back, I don't know, but I read it had a rocky start. And we're still on 95 South Newark, and we're meeting 3 for Secaucus and Rutherford. I've never heard of Rutherford. I've heard of East Rutherford because that's where the football stadium is, but okay, I guess there would be a Rutherford too. And now we meet 280 for Newark and Kearney. So because we have a Newark exit here, we're now on 95 South Trenton, which again is a terrible choice because for a long time there was a gap in I-95 and it never went to Trenton. The gap was never going to be filled, and we've known that since the 80s. And now there is no gap and 95 does not go to Trenton. So absolutely ridiculous that we would be signed 95 South Trenton. Should be Philly. Got a nice view of the Pulaski Skyway here, and we see it is Highway 1 and 9, Newark and Jersey City. So a site from the introduction to The Sopranos. We're playing that game again. Speaking of The Sopranos, this burned out warehouse also features in the opening credits to the show. We're meeting I-78 for Newark Airport and Holland Tunnel, signed the same way it was going northbound, with only very immediate controls, although busy places to be sure, and 95 South, Trenton. And our 2 legs have ended, so we are switching over to our 2 carriageways instead of 3. So we'll have 95 South cars only on the left, and 95 South trucks and buses on the right. Got this sign here that could give us some information. There's nothing on it right now, but it's cool to see that it's there. I'm sure there's a lot of stuff to report on this very busy stretch of road. And we see I-78 itself as sort of its own carriageway, as the traffic has already exited 478, but it continues along 95 for a little ways. We pass the Newark Airport, so we see a plane taking off right there. And we get our through traffic sign featured in the opening of The Sopranos. Although that sign isn't there anymore, now we get exit 13, 278 for Elizabeth and Staten Island 2 miles away. Exit 13A, Newark Airport, coming up in just a quarter mile. So 278 meets 95 twice. I almost wonder why they don't switch it to an X95 instead of a 78, which it doesn't meet at all. And we see this exit 13, 2 miles, 278 Elizabeth, this sign we saw in the intro to The Sopranos. But it's not there anymore. This is a few years ago, and if we look at that sign now, it talks about the 2 bridges that are coming up at exit 13. We see our dual carriageways with 278 Elizabeth and Staten Island and some industry in the background. Let's take a closer look at that refinery, which we also see, guess where? And any Sopranos fan will instantly recognize these oil containers and the one with the drive safely sign. And here we get exit 11, and it is for the Garden State Parkway, New Jersey's other major toll road, and one we will cover one day. And Woodbridge is more the control city for US 9 than it is for the GSP. We had a lot of Metuchen love on the northbound video, so we'll take a look at it again on the southbound video. We see North 287 for Metuchen and 440 for Perth Amboy, and this was requested by Warren Freitag, or at least with a larger amount, so I'll mention him again. So thank you so much. We get the Molly Pitcher service area. I actually got off at this service area when I was driving south on the turnpike, the one time I ever personally drove south on it. And now we've got exit 8, and exit 8 is requested by Justin D. Music. So I appreciate that a lot. Thank you so much. Meaning exit 7A, 195 for Trenton and Shore Points. So Trenton gets off here, and now we get 95 South Camden. What? So we're not going to sign Philly, we're going to sign a suburb of Philly that, guess what, I-95 and the Turnpike don't actually go to, instead of Philly that 95 does go to? What are you doing, New Jersey? My God, that's horrible. Just because it's in New Jersey, sign it over a giant place like Philly. Ridiculous. Here is this exit a few years ago when we could see the old sign that was there before. It was just South New Jersey Turnpike. Through traffic, better than Camden being there, and that's when the 95 connection had not been made yet, so 95 used to just disappear right here. This is where the gap in 95 started. 95 was signed south up until 195, and then it just went away and magically appeared in the Trenton area. So, wow. Here's exit 6. This is our exit. This is where we get off to follow South 95 to West 276, Pennsylvania Turnpike, and Philadelphia is finally mentioned. South Camden and Wilmington. I mean, Camden should never be there. It should never be signed for Camden. But the Turnpike doesn't actually go there, and it's a suburb. Wilmington, Baltimore, or just Baltimore would do too. And we are now on 95 South to 276 West, and we are heading westbound toward Pennsylvania at this point, and Philadelphia is signed. On the bridge crossing the Delaware River, we get Pennsylvania on one side and New Jersey on the other side, so that's pretty cool. And I didn't see a Welcome to Pennsylvania sign itself. If you'd like to see a Welcome to Pennsylvania sign, I have, 47 different episodes with Pennsylvania in it somewhere, at least it seems that way. You can check out any of those. Here's where we're getting our toll to cross the Delaware River. and we're getting our exit for Levittown and Bristol as well. And here is the new interchange that closed the I-95 gap. So we have 95 South Philadelphia and 276 West Harrisburg. Huh? So they can sign 276 for Harrisburg here instead of Valley Forge, but they can't sign 76 itself for Harrisburg. Makes no sense. Because it's the turnpike all the way, then it works? I don't know. I mean, Harrisburg's the right choice here, but it would be the right choice downtown too. And here is what our ramps look like as we get onto mainline I-95 and what used to be called I-95 that went up toward the Scudder's Falls Bridge. And we see it is built so that we do have northbound and southbound traffic roughly next to each other. So now we're on 95 South Philadelphia, and we get 413 for Bristol here. Here in the background, we can see the Betsy Ross Bridge, so I wanted to show this because Ashley requested that in the northbound video, and she tipped a lot, so thank you so much, Ashley, and here is the bridge. I appreciate it. Thank you. And we're meeting 676 for Central Philadelphia and the Ben Franklin Bridge. So eastbound 676, we get the Ben Franklin Bridge, which is right there, but no mention of New Jersey at all. Here's the place to put Camden on a sign, because that's where 676 is going. But in Pennsylvania, we don't get any mention of Camden. Only in New Jersey, where we get way too many mentions of it. So neither state knows how to sign Camden. Coming to downtown Philly, and we are getting 95 South Philadelphia International Airport. I mean, it's good to sign an airport, but it's weird to make that your primary control city in the center of the sixth largest city in the country. We meet 76 East Walt Whitman Bridge. Could have Atlantic City sign there for 76 East, but we don't want to sign anything over in New Jersey whatsoever, and New Jersey does it the same way. And 95 South Philadelphia International Airport, so we don't want to sign Baltimore because they job Philly too, so again, yeah, East Coast, super petty. Everybody's got to be mad at each other. And speaking of petty, Eagles fans. No, I kid. I actually like the Eagles. I wanted to play somebody else in the Super Bowl that I could wholeheartedly cheer against. I actually do appreciate the Eagles fan base for the most part, and generally do cheer for their team in the NFC. Here we have a closer look at their stadium, along with whatever the other vet is called these days, where the Phillies are playing. We've got our double-decker bridge, and we are crossing going southbound over the river out of town, and it would be so much more impressive going the other way looking at the Philly skyline, but instead we look at basically nothing. There's our exit for the Philly airport, so now we're getting 95 South Chester and Wilmington. Why? Baltimore. And a random interchange is just 95 South Chester. I mean, Chester is basically a suburb of Philly. Shouldn't have that on a major road like I-95. If it was a 3-digit road, okay, state highway, fine, but not on I-95. Meeting 476 Plymouth Meeting. I mean, I talked about this in the northbound. That's not a great way for 476 to go either. 95 South Chester, Wilmington again. I mean, either just pick Wilmington or put Baltimore on there the way it should be. We meet the Commodore Barry Bridge in Chester, and it is actually acknowledging that it goes to New Jersey. We just get New Jersey itself and no city, and 95 South Wilmington. And here we're meeting 322 for West Chester, not to be confused with Chester, and 95 South Wilmington. We meet 495 just before we enter Delaware, just a little bit before, and it is signed for Port of Wilmington and Baltimore. 95 itself just for Wilmington. They want through traffic on 495, and from what I heard from the comments, sounds like it is a good road. And welcome to Delaware. We are back in Delaware for the final time. Rhode Island and Maine only got the one episode where they got to be featured with I-95. Delaware, hey, you get two, as one of the 3 states with only one 2-digit interstate highway, and all 3 states happen to have the same 2-digit interstate highway. And we are getting into downtown Wilmington, and we get Delaware Avenue. Hey, why not? It's Delaware. Right now we get 95 South Newark and Baltimore, and no, that's not the Newark we were signed for before. That is Newark, Delaware. Probably should just be Baltimore. Newark isn't that big, but it is the home of the Fighting Blue Hens and the University of Delaware, and I assume Joe Flacco. And 295 north for Newcastle, Delaware Memorial Bridge. We are meeting Delaware Highway 1, so this is probably the biggest junction in Delaware. We have Delaware's only 2-digit interstate highway, and we have its most important state route that goes south to Dover and throughout the state. At random interchanges, it is 95 North, Delaware Memorial Bridge, Wilmington, and South, Newark, Baltimore. Here is the Travel Plaza on the Delaware Turnpike in Delaware, and I believe it is called the Delaware Travel Plaza. Here's our exit for Newark, and we're also getting 896 for Middletown, and it's the last exit before the toll. So you should get off at that one, or actually you should get off at the one before that at 1B. So again, yeah, friends don't let friends drive on the Delaware Turnpike and pay that extra money. So we see it would take 3 minutes to drive from this interchange to the other interchange in the Maryland side. But if you get off and go around, it takes 9 minutes. So it is only an extra 6 minutes added to your route. So unless you're making tons and tons of money, probably worth it to skip around. And welcome to Maryland. We don't get a traditional welcome to Maryland sign here. We get welcome to the John F. Kennedy Memorial Highway, which is a toll road in Maryland, at least through part of it. And now that we're in Maryland, we finally get 95 South Baltimore straight up. And we see Baltimore 57 miles away. We cross the Susquehanna River, and because we're going southbound, we cross it for free and not pay the massive toll you pay going the other direction. Meet 695, signed for Essex and Towson. This interchange used to be pretty cool. Both roads used to switch carriageways around, but now it's more of a straight up regular exit. 95 South Baltimore. Meet 895, the Baltimore Harbor Tunnel. There's an extension on 895 that can take you over toward I-97 to Annapolis. Be nice to have an I-97 mention here. No hazmats allowed in Fort McHenry Tunnel, so this is the exit you must get off at if you have any. And we see a little Baltimore scenery here. And here is our toll heading into the tunnel. And going into the tunnel, that building up there, we get that nice welcome to Baltimore thing, and we see our 4 bores here. Or actually, we see 3 of them. And on the other side of the Fort McHenry Tunnel, we get a pretty decent view of the Baltimore skyline. And we're meeting 395 that will take you into downtown Baltimore and the Baltimore-Washington Parkway coming up shortly. And from here we can see the Ravens Stadium. Camden Yards Orioles Stadium is a little harder to see. I think it's a little bit over there behind it, but it's mostly covered by the Ravens Stadium. Been to both parks, both pretty nice. And we get our exit for 295 South Baltimore Washington Parkway for Washington, and 95 itself signed for Washington. Interesting that this entire interchange, along with the 395 one, is entirely over water. We're meeting 695 again, and we do get a nice shout out to I-70 for 695 West. 695 East seems like they could give us a I-97 shout out, but you know, I-70 is a bit more important than 97, I guess. And here we have 195 for the BWI Airport. Heading south, we're on 95 Washington-Richmond. That kind of matches the northbound Baltimore-New York sign that we see. Now we see Washington-Richmond, skipping past Washington. And we are at the top of the Beltway. We get 495 West, Silver Spring, Bethesda, and 495 for Washington and Richmond. So they want the through traffic to go that way. And so we shall. Here we are merging onto the Capitol Beltway, and right away we get exit 24 for Greenbelt Station. Actually, a lot of the times when I went to DC from Baltimore, I drove and got off at this Greenbelt Station. It's like $1.50 to park and then take the Green Line into town and just hang out in town all day with that. Good way to go. And now we meet the Baltimore-Washington Parkway once again, and if I were driving into central DC and parking in DC, then I would be taking this route from Baltimore. Although some people might prefer to take West 50 Washington into DC, you could get West 50 over to New York Avenue. And now, from this point, we're signed 495 for Richmond instead of Washington, because we've kind of had our major Washington exits. At random interchanges, it is just south 495. Although at this interchange, we get 495 for Joint Base Andrews and Richmond. We get a little local and express action here in Maryland. We meet 295 North Washington with National Harbor coming up soon, and we will be on the bridge to Virginia shortly. And here we are on the bridge. We get a nice laundry list of exits overhead here. 95, 395, 495. The Springfield interchange is 8 miles away. I-66, 16, and the Dulles Road, 20. And from the Wilson Bridge, we do get a look at downtown DC. This is as good of a look at DC as we get from I-95. And right here at this point, we are technically in a very small corner of DC as well. We cross into Virginia. Virginia is for lovers. Nice overhead sign for a state welcome sign there, right on the border. And we get US 1 for Alexandria. And this exit was requested by Mike Scheinberg, who wanted to see this exit going both ways. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate that. And we are heading toward the Springfield interchange. We get 95 South Richmond, 495 North Tyson's Corner, and 395 for Washington and Springfield. I guess we're throwing Springfield in for 644, or because if you were going to Washington, you might have already exited. So I-95 looks like it's going straight, but we are actually merging into a southerly direction and off the Beltway here. We do have an east-west kind of thing, just like we did with the exit in Pennsylvania. Here's a look at the Springfield interchange from overhead. It is extremely complex and confusing when you're driving on it, and if you look at it from above, that doesn't help much. It is a tangled mess, and it has been reconstructed many times to be as high speed as possible. We are merging in with 395 traffic to head south toward Richmond. And we are meeting 610 east for Ayyar, and this was requested by Frank Truslow. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. And I've been near this exit too. I think I've been to Ayyar Harbor before. And our mileage signs, haven't had many of those in this episode. Fredericksburg 15, Richmond 67. Fine secondary Fredericksburg. We ended in Fredericksburg, Virginia last time at the Rappahannock River, which in a lot of ways is a dividing line between the North and the South, the Virginia-rich suburbs of DC, and then the more Virginia. So here we are crossing the Rappahannock on Virginia Route 3, heading into downtown Fredericksburg, and we're going to weave our way back over to 95. Oh look, we're there already. So we see right away we get 95 south for Richmond and 95 north for Washington, just as you would expect. To jump back just a little bit, Thomas the Train wanted to see exit 130B for Culpeper in the Fredericksburg area, so thank you so much for that, and we will move on to under the bridge where we came on. And we also see exit 130A. Jacques Keendrick had a request for this in the previous episode, so I'll give him another shout out as well, so thank you so much. All right, the first mileage sign we get below Fredericksburg, we see Ashland is 38 miles away and Richmond 53, so not too far to go till Richmond. And then we get exit 126 in southern Fredericksburg. This is also for Spotsylvania, and TheDerpHog wanted to take a look at. And here we've got exit 118 in Virginia. This is a request from TheDerpHog, and he wanted to see this because this is his backup route home. So thank you so much for that request. Here is another request from TheDerpHog. This is right near exit 108 in Virginia, and this is the Ladysmith rest stop. TheDerpHog himself made this picture, so I am showing you this. And it looks pretty cool. Pretty long ways from the other rest areas. Interesting. Thank you so much for the request. All right, heading into Richmond, the first major thing we have to deal with is the 295 intersection. They make a very big deal about this. Our first sign is 2 miles away, and we see 295 South Rocky Mount NC and Richmond International Airport. And now less than a mile out, now we're getting 295 southbound Rocky Mount again, and 95 south for Richmond and Petersburg both. Even closer in, now we're getting 295 to East 64, so we're getting 64's control cities there. South 95 to 295 and West 64, and we get West 64's control cities there along with 95's. 295 splits off and we get that 2 East 64, and now we get Rocky Mount and Norfolk. Now we're getting 95 south to I-85. We're getting an I-85 mention out here, and Richmond, Durham as our control cities. We get one more warning that 295 is going to take us to 64 West, so if you were heading towards Charlottesville, you should be exiting here. And now finally, here is the split. So 295 to East 64 and South 95 to 295 and West 64, although the 85 signage has gone away now. The original part of 295 is gone, and now we get 95 South Richmond and Petersburg, and 295 for Charlottesville. Further into Richmond, now we are getting South 95 and East 64 to Petersburg and Norfolk, because we are meeting 64 here. West 64 to Charlottesville, along with South 195, and we'll take 195 through Richmond this time. So when we get on the 195 interchange, we immediately have the exit for I-64, because they kind of meet at the same spot, and we are now on 195 South. 195 now signed south for Downtown and City Stadium, and at the City Stadium exit, now we are on South 195 and East 6495 downtown. 195 becomes a toll road and also a state highway, since I think it is not legal to build an interstate as a toll road, and I believe this is a newer road, so they would have had to build the toll section as a state highway. You can, of course, make an old toll road into an interstate, as is the case with all the East Coast turnpikes. Here's our toll. Forget exactly how much it is, but it was not very much, 75 cents or something like that. And now we get a laundry list of exits, as we are in a below-grade freeway section here going toward downtown Richmond. A couple more exits, and then we get a through traffic control city. Wow, a proper through traffic. Get to see downtown Richmond pretty well, and we've got this exit for US 60 here. And now we're getting notice that we're going to be meeting South 95 and East 64, Charlottesville and Norfolk. They've got a pretty good cap over 195 here. You can see in downtown Richmond they've capped it pretty well, and they've built that park there, so that's pretty good. I wasn't able to find a way to get this actual ramp from Street View. Street View is being very temperamental here, so I had to take it from a different ramp. But we see here, North 95, 264, Washington, Charlottesville, Norfolk, and 95 South Petersburg. I'm going to back up and go on to 95 a bit. John Crandall had this request for a sign for VCU. This is on the 95-64 concurrency. So we have Virginia Commonwealth University. Thank you. Still a little salty about 2011, so I can't say I'm happy about this one. Here is the split on 95, where it splits with 64, so this is backed up again. So we get East 64 Norfolk and South 95 Petersburg. So interesting choice that we're going with Petersburg. There isn't much on 95 south of Richmond. Between Richmond and Florida, it's pretty unpopulated, so I'm actually okay with Petersburg, because that is the split with I-85. Here's a look at downtown Richmond from the river area. I was trying to find the state capital, but it seems like it's impossible to see from anywhere on the freeway. At random interchanges, it is 95 South Petersburg. Phlatlander requested this exit for 288, the almost beltway of Richmond, and it was a $20 tip, so yeah, I'll show it on the southbound exit as well. Thank you once again. Thanks. Alright, jumping ahead to Petersburg. This is the way it used to look. As we saw in the I-85 video, we get 95 South Rocky Mount and Miami, and 85 South Durham and Atlanta, but Virginia has decided we can't have nice things. So here is what it currently looks like. 95 just Rocky Mount, 85 with the very reasonable Durham. And we do get one last Miami holdover. I think it's funny how this sign is Rocky Mount NC, but Miami, just Miami. We all know Miami. And thank you to FL Don for requesting this interchange. And here we get the southern end of 295, and it is signed for Washington. So if you want to go back the way we came, you can get on that. And 95 South Emporia and Rocky Mount NC. I don't know if Emporia is really secondary worthy. It's like 5,000 people. I know there's sort of a big junction for Norfolk, but if we have 64 here already, that's not an important junction for us. And Virginia is signing Emporia at random interchanges, so can't say I'm a big fan of that. Although, I mean, signing Rocky Mount, it's not like Rocky Mount is Philadelphia or something. On mileage signs, we get Carson, Emporia, and Rocky Mount NC 93. Here's our exit for US 58, signed for Emporia and Norfolk, and South Hill in the other direction. And at US 58, it is 95 South for Rocky Mount. Welcome to North Carolina. Let's see if I'm gonna need the meme one last time. We get a good mileage sign, sort of, right off the bat. We get Roanoke Rapids, which is the next town, and then we get Rocky Mount as the secondary, but then Wilson on the bottom line. I don't know. Again, there's not much on I-95 in North Carolina, but I feel like Wilson is kind of a weird choice to be the third one there. At random interchanges, we get Emporia and Rocky Mount. So North Carolina being provincial for other states' provincial control cities too, not just their own. So at least they're consistent. The TheDerpHog had a lot of requests for the Roanoke Rapids area. So here's another look at exit 173. We can see the Cracker Barrel itself that he spoke about stopping at a few times, along with a number of other businesses right here in Roanoke Rapids. So thank you so much. Really appreciate that. ZJC NCSC wanted to see this exit, 138, for Nashville and Raleigh because it's the Raleigh exit. And one could almost argue that 95 should have been signed south for Raleigh from Petersburg. It is a little faster to take 95 and 64 to Raleigh than it is to take 85 and going through the triangle there. 95 now south for Wilson and Fayetteville, which arguably should be the control city from Petersburg. And now we're meeting 795. Once again, no mention of 587, which theoretically is here as well. and it's signed for Goldsboro, Raleigh, and Wilson. So the people who wanted to take a different way to Raleigh that takes longer instead of taking US 64 could be getting off here and taking that. On 795, they've got the ridiculous South Benson 495. Benson, once again. And 95 North Rocky Mount, which at least is defensible. Mileage signs coming out of here. We've got Smithfield and Fayetteville. And we meet I-40 right outside of the booming metropolis of Benson. And we see 40 is signed for Wilmington and Clinton. And then Raleigh-Durham. I feel like one of these things is not like the other on that sign. We don't get a pull through for I-95, so let's look at I-95 from I-40. And we see it as South Benson and Fayetteville. Whew. Speaking of one of these things not like the other. What is Benson doing there? Random interchanges around here, we get Smithfield and Dunn. So, quite small towns. Dunn is now 6 miles away, Fayetteville 31. Jasper Cat 93 requested this interchange, so I will show you that. It is Jonesboro Road, exit 75 in North Carolina. And thank you very much. Heading toward Fayetteville, we get 295 once again. It doesn't have an overhead sign, North Carolina. And we get Newton Grove and Fort Bragg. And from what I understand, 295 is a newer road. On 295 itself, we get the comically bad 95 for Benson and Lumberton. It's what, like 8,000 people between those two places, something like that. And now in the main Fayetteville interchange, we now get 95 for Lumberton and Florence. So gotta throw that Lumberton on there. God forbid we don't have a North Carolina control city on an overhead. And at this particular interchange, we get Fayetteville and Roland. Roland? I've never even heard of Roland. I have no idea where that is, and I'm not gonna look it up. Here we have the mind-blowing, head-hurting 274s on the same sign. The worst. The worst. And Rockingham and Wilmington, reasonable control cities for US 74. And in the distributor lane, we get 95 South Florence and 74 East for Whiteville and Wilmington. And here are some billboards in the North Carolina side. Edwin Paschke wanted to see some of these billboards, so shout out to him. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. $20. Thanks a lot. So here is our exit for south of the border, and this is pretty weird. We're actually still north of the border here. This is exit 1, so it's in North Carolina. You can see south of the border there in the background. And then we can see right here, welcome to South Carolina, and another South Carolina sign over there with the large south of the border facility to the left. And the exit 1 actually appears to be in South Carolina. In fact it is. So this is quite strange. So exit 1 of North Carolina is in South Carolina, and if one were driving southbound and wanting to go to south of the border, you would cross into South Carolina, get off at exit 1 and come back into North Carolina, and then turn right and go back into South Carolina once again. And you would reverse the process if you were leaving. You would have to drive back into North Carolina before going back into South Carolina. Interesting setup here. And at that south of the border exit, it is 95 North Fayetteville and South Florence. And we see Florence is 29 miles away. I would actually prefer Columbia to be the control city here just because it's quite a bit larger. I know you go to Florence to get I-20 first. And we meet US 52 for Darlington and Florence. So NASCAR fans and Florence people unite. We meet I-20, one of the main reasons that Florence is signed because of I-20. And we get 95 Savannah at this point, West 20 Columbia, and East 20 Florence, but it is not 20, it is Business Route 20. So I don't know why they have a full red, white, and blue shield there when it should be the Business Route shield. At random interchanges in Florence, we get Fayetteville and Savannah. And a little bit farther down, I've got a request from Kevin Durrick for exit 170 in South Carolina because he wanted to show the Buc-ee's that is here. Apparently the southernmost Buc-ee's. I went to a Buc-ee's in Iowa. Seemed like a fine spot. And Savannah on the bottom line here, 164 miles away. Now we're meeting I-26 for Charleston and 26 West for Columbia. One could argue that 95 should be southbound signed for Charleston from the I-20 interchange because from that point it is the fastest way to Charleston by way of I-26. And Charleston, pretty big city. We're getting down toward the southern end of South Carolina, so here we get 278 for Hardeeville and Hilton Head Island. Kind of a small sign for a big thing like Hilton Head Island. And a bit further down, also for Hardeeville, and you can take US 17 here directly to Savannah. It's actually the one time I was in this area, that's the way I took to Savannah. It looks like you can get a Blizzard for 69 cents. Nice. And well, this is the final mileage sign in South Carolina, and this was requested by Mike DeMauro and Mike's Mission, so I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. And a pretty interesting sign because we see 3 out-of-state cities. Since South Carolina has nothing more to sign, there are no more exits in South Carolina. So we get Savannah, Brunswick, and Jacksonville. And welcome to Georgia. We get into Savannah pretty much right away, and we get 16 East Savannah and 16 West Macon, and 95 now signed for Brunswick and Jacksonville for some reason instead of just Jacksonville. Jacksonville is pretty big, last I checked, can probably hold down the sign by itself. And annoyingly, at random interchanges, we get just Brunswick. We don't get Jacksonville, so that's pretty bad. And now on a mileage sign, Brunswick 52. They can't even put two things on the sign to have Jacksonville? Are you kidding me? Some like North Carolina State DOT come down to Georgia here? Usually Georgia does way better than this. This is awful. And this exit was requested by Speedboy14. This is exit 38 in Georgia, and it is for these places, and it is also for St. Simon's Island. I hope I'm saying that right, which is why he wanted to see it. St. Simon's, St. Simmons, one of those. So thank you so much for the request. And here is the Brunswick area. So we do at least get an overhead sign, but we don't get a pull-through sign, so it doesn't quite meet my minimum standard of Control City. In Brunswick, we do get Savannah and Jacksonville, and that's not surprising at all. And now we get Woodbine and Jacksonville on the mileage sign. And we head into Florida, and at interchanges in Florida, we get just Jacksonville, so no surprise there. And here we see exit 373 in Florida. This was requested by Tim Bryant. I did forget to put it on the original video, so I'm putting it on both supercuts. I do apologize for that. But I really appreciate your support, and thank you so much. And here is the exit. And here we get Jacksonville 19 miles away, although you will actually be in the city of Jacksonville well before that. We're meeting 295, and it is signed for the beaches and also the Beltway to I-10, and South 95 now for Jacksonville and Daytona Beach, so we're getting the next Control City after. Here we meet US 1, and it's actually been since we were in Fredericksburg or so, maybe Richmond, since we have seen US 1. They have been on very divergent paths ever since then. And here we are meeting I-10 with its horrible, horrible Control City. That should not be signed. That should be Tallahassee, no question. We do get a nice view of downtown Jacksonville as we come by the St. Johns River here. And we meet 295, Beltway for Orange Park and Jacksonville Beaches. And now we're signed for St. Augustine and Daytona Beach. And that's fine, people have heard of St. Augustine. But at random interchanges, we get no St. Augustine. It is Daytona Beach that is signed. St. Augustine 14 away, fine secondary, and Daytona at 75. I think Daytona is the right pick here. Some people could argue for Miami, but because you got the split for I-4, so you have Miami and Orlando, two major metros, Daytona on its own is famous enough, so I think it works. Tommy Mattix wanted to take a look at this interchange, 95 South, and I-4 splits off for Orlando. We also have 400 and 92. 400, I think, is just I-4. And US 92 heading for Daytona Beach or Orlando. It's a pretty interesting exit since it's 260 CBA. It's two entirely different interchanges with US 92 and I-4. And our next mileage sign, Miami, 260 miles away. Florida is so deceptively big. It takes forever to go down the peninsula, and it takes forever to go across the panhandle. It's weirdly big. And here we get an exit for Kennedy Space Center and Orlando. And now we've got the B line, now Beach Line Expressway heading toward Orlando, a toll road, and also to Port Canaveral, a fairly popular cruise port. I've been a couple of times. Edwin Paschke requested a Ron John Surf Shop billboard somewhere in 985. Thank you so much for the request. And now from this area, Miami is now 200 miles away. All right, we got to skip ahead. All right, here is where we cross Florida's turnpike, but have no interchange, of course. Florida acting like a proper East Coast state here with its lack of interchanges between interstates and toll roads. And 95 is still signed for Miami, and we now are downtown. That is downtown West Palm Beach that we're at here. Still 70 miles away from West Palm to Miami. That seems oddly far. Here's the main exit for Boca Raton. I believe there was a Boca Raton next two exits. I went to Boca once when I was 17. I was really mostly just into listening to Nine Inch Nails the whole time and didn't like Boca at all. It was all old people. We stayed with my grandparents' friends, and I think it's probably still all old people somehow. Boca. And we meet 595 for Port Everglades, Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. Again, those are all for eastbound 595. We don't get any kind of westbound 595 thing, which is weird because there's a lot more westbound 595 than there is eastbound. And we get 95 South Miami. This is a wild interchange where we meet 441 and Florida's Turnpike and a whole bunch of other stuff. Yet, no control cities whatsoever, and I looked at previous signs for this interchange, and they also did not have control cities, so not very helpful there. We're meeting 195 for Miami Beach, and 95 is now signed south for downtown. And now we're going to be meeting East 395 for the Port of Miami, and we also have an exit for the Miami International Airport, exit 3A. This exit was requested by Xanadu Studios, so thank you so much. I appreciate that. We're getting toward the end. We get US 41, Lakeshore Drive itself, coming way down to downtown Miami. It's a road I'm probably going to have to cover. And downtown Miami exit here, and we get no control cities for 95 since it's only got a little ways to go. Here's the best look I could get of downtown Miami from southbound 95. It's better on northbound 95. And here's that 41 interchange coming back onto 95. And again, we just get 95 south, no control city whatsoever. And here is basically the end, exit 1A, the Rickenbacker Causeway in Key Biscayne. Now we get 95 ends half a mile away. We're going to end at US 1, and they tell us US 1 south, reduce speed. And wow, we actually get a 95 end sign. So we haven't seen a lot of end signs lately, so it's great to see that 95's got one, especially in this glamorous ending in South Florida. All right, let's talk about TODS the way it should be for southbound I-95, the whole thing. It is not the same as northbound in reverse. I feel like there are some cities that should be signed one way and some that should be signed the other way. So we'll look at those right here. For the way it should be, I'm going to say it should be Bangor from the jump. No reason to sign anything else. Then Augusta out of Bangor, and then just Lewiston, because you should be signing 295 for Portland, not 95, just 295. Then Portland, after we have had the split with 295, is fine. Then I would sign Boston from Portland, no Kittery, nothing like that. And I feel like signing Portsmouth is less important going southbound. Then I would go Providence from Boston as it's done, New York as it's done from Providence, but I wouldn't pick up those Connecticut cities like Connecticut does. Newark, I think, would work from New York, although if they just signed it for Philly, I would not complain about it, but I know that's never going to happen. From Newark, Philly, absolutely, all the way, no Camden, no Wilmington, no Trenton, Philly. And then I would sign Baltimore from downtown Philly, and Washington after that as it's done. Then Richmond, Petersburg, it's a smaller place, but because we have a major split there and there's not that much south on 95, Petersburg is fine that way. Then maybe Rocky Mount going southbound. I don't think it's necessary for northbound, but maybe southbound. Maybe once I-87's done, it could work for both directions. And then Fayetteville, I would sign from that point. And Florence, I would sign southbound. I realized signing anything other than that kind of makes it a little confusing. From Florence, I would go Savannah, and then Savannah to Jacksonville and Daytona Beach, and from Daytona, I would sign at Miami. I do think signing Daytona is important because of that split with I-4 for Orlando. And finally, at the end, I like you guys' romanticism of signing Key West, but I would still go Coral Gables there. It's the home of University of Miami. It's a fairly well-known suburb. And Key West, there's just not a lot of cars at the end of 95 that are going to Key West. Key West traffic would have been taking Florida's Turnpike, because you can get a lot further south to US 1 on that. So I don't think there would be much Key West traffic there. All right, thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. I really appreciate it, and I'm going to have the people who have contributed to I-95 in the description of the video. So thank you so much. I will list everyone in the video description who has done a super thanks in this series. As I said, we're obviously done with I-95. I-96 is probably complete at this point, but I think you could probably still sneak in a 96 request. 97, 99 are wide open. So thank you so much for watching this episode of Control City Freak. Until next time, my name is Todd, and keep on trucking.